Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode will be episode 3 in our beginner Python projects tutorial series on the channel. And we are going to be covering some things assuming you have some pretty basic understanding of Python already. So there is a tutorial on this channel as well, a tutorial series if you have no exposure to Python. That's the best place to start for beginners. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this project. So when applying for home loans, typically the most that you'll be able to get approved for is 28% of your pre-tax income on housing. That's a fairly typical mark that banks aim for. But again, this is just kind of a practice in taking a real-world scenario and figuring out how you would model that in code. So there are a lot of variables that go into home loans, like credit and location and things like that, but we're going to kind of simplify it for today's code and really focus on this 28% of your pre-tax income. So the formula for calculating a estimated home loan is pretty straightforward, but the way we're going to do it, we're going to start with our function, define, calculate max home loan, and we don't have to pass any parameters into this thing because we're going to handle getting the parameters inside our function. So we'll start by saying salary, and let's get the user input from them on what their annual household income is. And let's say it's going to be a float, and then we ask them, what is your household pre-tax annual income? And there we go. That's going to be an input that's going to ask users to enter their salary info. And then let's say rate is float input. Let's ask them to estimate your, we're talking to them, expected interest rate. So we're going to kind of ask the user to do a little homework here, because this is something where you should be able to punch in your credit and punch in the region that you live in and get an idea for approximately what a housing rate is today. I mean, those things fluctuate so much based on the economy and based on location that we can ask the user to just kind of estimate on their own. And then let's figure out what they have in mind for a down payment. So that's kind of something we'll get into later. It's not directly related in getting approved, but sometimes the amount that you pay will go up significantly if you can't get to a 20% down payment. So let's just ask them, how much do you have available as down payment? Okay, so we're getting 3 useful inputs there. And let's go ahead and start using that. So let's say the max monthly payment you could make based on our estimate of 28% of your salary is what you'd get approved for. Let's say that would be your salary times 0.28, and let's divide that by 12. So that's a monthly payment. And then let's print that out. So that's just kind of first thing, the maximum monthly payment would be around, and again, these are estimates. We're trying to give a potential user an idea of what they could expect. So let's round that. We don't really care about to the thousandths of cents. Let's just say max monthly and to 2 decimal places. And so, I mean, if we run this right now, we're not doing anything with rate or down yet. Oh, this is still from our previous example. Let's run. So, we forgot to call the function. Calculate. Silly. There we go. So let's just say we make $60,000 a year. We're expecting a 6% rate. We're not doing anything with these 2 values yet, but so they're telling us on an income of $60,000, the max monthly payment we'd be allowed to pay would be around $1,400 a month, and these are pre-tax numbers. But so that's kind of cool. We got to a maximum allowable monthly, but now we have to actually calculate, well, what would that come out to in terms of total value of the home? So there's a factor that's pretty important in calculating this that we'll call interest variable, because it gets used twice in the grader formula for it. But that looks like 1 plus the rate that got entered as a decimal over 100 times 12, because this is asking for monthly rate, and this is entered as a percentage. So to get from percentage to decimal, you divide by 100, and then to get from that number to monthly, because that's annual, you divide by 12. So we'll actually, instead of saying 100 times 12, we'll say 1200. I just wanted you to know where that value is coming from. And then I'm actually going to put that whole thing inside another set of parentheses, because the power that we're raising it to is going to be 360. So this is, I'm calling it the interest variable. This 360 is number of payment periods, and we'll just do it assuming you're getting a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So that would be 12 monthly payments for 30 years. That's where the 360 is coming from. And I mean, you can find this formula online if you want, but or you can just follow along and say we're taking a real world scenario and we're modeling code after it. So for the rate math, it comes out to interest variable divided by, and then you'll kind of see right away why it was more useful to write that code as a variable. It's divided by interest variable minus 1, so we're getting it as a ratio. And then that whole thing is multiplied times the rate, again, divided by 1200. So, I mean, you could even make a case that like breaking it into rate divided by 1200 as its own variable could have been useful as well. But this is how we get the rate math, and then the maximum loan that you typically would get approved for. I'm not sure why my indentation got jacked up there. But the max actual loan would be a function of your maximum monthly payment, which we've calculated out, divided by the rate math. And I'm getting quite a few red lines. So what have I done? Unexpected syntax. Curious. Well, we'll keep going and see if this runs. So then, after we've gotten the max loan, let's go ahead and print. And I really got to figure out what is going on in these lines. Let's go ahead and try that again. We spelled down incorrectly. Did I new line this? I might be one. I was stupid. So I was one parentheses short on closing that function out, which is syntax is the least fun part of code always. But then once we get the max loan, let's go ahead and print the max you are likely to be approved for is around, and we want to say around because we're not promising them anything. We're not a bank. We're just trying to give them an idea of what they could get. And then we will round the max loan we just calculated, and we will throw a caveat in here based on just salary. So that's pretty cool, but let's go ahead and do a second thing as well and just tell them like we're acting in their best interest. However, to avoid PMI, which is the added expense if you're not up to a 20% down payment, and have a 20% down payment, the max you would want to borrow would be, and then let's say round our down payment times 5, right? Because we want to keep it at 20%. And let's round that to 2 decimal places. Go ahead and close that out. And let's see if this works. We did that kind of fast. I made a few mistakes, but let's see what we get. So household, say we're doing pretty well, making 100 grand, and we're expecting a 3% interest rate. Rates are super low right now. And sure, we have 20,000 as a down payment. So they're saying, you probably would get approved for a monthly payment of around 2,300, which is a house around 5,500. Or 55,000, 550,000. Goodness. Purely based on salary. But if all you have is 20 grand for a down payment, then you might want to shoot for a mortgage more around 100 grand. Otherwise, you're paying a couple $100 a month in PMI. So let's try running that again and say, okay, well, we've got 100 grand. We're expecting a 4% rate, but we're doing a little better on down payment. We've got saved up to 60 grand, and let's see what comes of that. So same monthly payment as before, but you can see just by increasing the interest rate, that's actually going to give us less of a total loan because more of that monthly payment would be interest. And then again, if we want to have a 20% down payment, then the max we might want to take out would actually be 300 grand to avoid PMI. So this is kind of a useful tool. These numbers are pretty close, I can tell you as someone who recently bought a house, but even if you don't care so much about calculating a home loan, this is a pretty useful example of taking a real world scenario and figuring out how to model it inside of code. And that's basically all writing code is. So hopefully you found this project informative and useful. If you have any questions or you would have done something differently than how I did it, feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And if you found this content or anything on the channel helpful, then go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And as always, thanks for checking out the channel and good luck with your code. Thanks. Bye.